drove me mad through the whole thing. It was so canned. There was nobody there laughing.
Yeah.
It was just added on afterwards because they would just say hello and the whole audience would be,
Yeah. Welcome to 1970s TV.
oh, how are you?
Yeah.
Okay. Every other word was a burst of laughter.
Okay.
And it was like, this is just getting annoying.
Okay. Welcome to Geeks Assembled. Today, we're going to talk about one of the early police comedies, Barney Miller. That's why you see all that picture behind us there with Fish and Luger and Yamana and Harris and everybody. And we have our Geeks Assembled cast here. And it's so good you won't even tell whether we've been eating brownies laced with hashish or not. Anyway, this is an episode from the 3rd season, 11th episode of Barney Miller, which was on ABC. Before that, there was a pilot that was filmed at CBS, actually, in 1974. This is a series from 1974 to 1982, and it lasted 8 seasons. And if you want to, not that everybody does, but you can also see Hal Linden on YouTube talking about Barney Miller and what they filmed and how many times ABC wanted to censor everything. Anyway, it happens that Wojciechowicz brings in a shoebox of brownies laced with hashish from his girlfriend or his girl that he's dating.
His neighbor.
Right. And
not his girlfriend.
And as people start eating the brownies in the squad room, somewhat hilarity ensues. But this is one of the most famous episodes of people, getting high from hash on TV. There's 3 other TV shows that did it. The 70s show, Freaks and Geeks, showed Barney Miller in their TV show. I guess it's still a stigma for some reason. I don't know why using marijuana is such a stigma. But let's go on with what people thought of the episode. Did you like it? Did you find it funny? I love Barney Miller, so almost every episode that I see, I pretty much, like 90% or 95%. And remember, too, this was a half-an-hour show, so that's pretty interesting that they had so many cast members in a half-an-hour show instead of an hour show.
So
to be fair, it was just in one location.
Throw it to Lee.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of money to have a lot of location shots.
Yeah, throw things at Lee. I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah. We'll throw you some brownies, Lee. Go ahead, Lee.
Just throw the lamp instead.
Well, I've got to say thank you, Alex, for the coup, what you've just held there. What
happened there? I was laughing, and then suddenly Alex was hosting. So I think you're going to have to cut the beginning of the cast because...
A revolution. We want a revolution.
It's a mutiny.
Margot, shut it.
Is it?
Respect
He's
my authority.
censoring me again.
Right.
Have you been in the hash?
I wish. If only. I've said this many times before. There's only a handful of American sitcoms I do like, and Barney Miller, it turns out, is not one of them. I've never seen it before, and I doubt I'll be seeing it again. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't make me laugh.
It was crap. Come on.
Your turn will come, please. It was
but you're trying not to say it.
No. It's quite. It's a quite typical of that comedy of that time. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Alex will know, but was every episode just set in the same So every episode was in the office.
Yeah, 99% of the
Oh
time.
my God!
It's in the squad room. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but no, as I said, and it has been mentioned earlier on about the canned laughter. I'm not a big fan of canned laughter. I don't know. It just you could see what they were trying to do, but it just didn't go there. You know what I mean? The land things up, and then nothing happened. I mean, nothing against the actors. I recognise a few of the faces in the show from movies and stuff like that. The actual played Fish. I've seen him in loads and loads of movies.
Yeah, he was in The Godfather. Yep.
Good bad, yeah, and yeah, it just and it has been mentioned. It has been the hash thing in food has been done in many comedy shows. Yeah, it just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't. I don't know, didn't do it for me. It just wasn't there. The spark wasn't there. But that's my opening thoughts anyway.
Okay, well, to be fair though, Lee, Absolutely Fabulous did have some canned laughter as well.
And it's not one. Absolutely Fabulous is not one of my all-time favorite comedies either. So I mean, I've got it on DVD, but it's not up there.
Okay, so Alex,
but there were a lot of it was filmed in front of a live audience.
Yeah, they changed it. They changed it. Like the first 2 seasons, they filmed it in front of a live audience. But it also has to be said that they had to censor some of the stuff. They had to write it on the fly. And there was also a lot of episodes that were filmed like from 1 o'clock to like 4 in the morning, too. So it was a very different sitcom from what they do now, where everything is very, very planned, very, scheduled and all that. So they actually had a lot of actors that were mad that they were filming so late, 1 to 4 in the morning for an episode.
So throw it to Alan.
Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Well, Alex, I know you chose this, and I know you love this comedy, but honestly, it just wasn't funny. Lee's correct. Alex, it was painful. I've got to be honest, it was rather painful to watch. Because even though it was 25 minutes, it was still too long. And I really didn't laugh at anything in it. I mean, the jokes just weren't there. They just weren't there. I mean, the canned laughter, Lee's right, the canned laughter, I mean, they'll just say hello and there'd be canned laughter. Or I'm off, canned laughter. Or how are you, canned laughter. I mean, every word was followed by canned laughter. And you're thinking, but what are they laughing at? And the problem is the jokes were, I mean, you had the, the altercation with the actor and the critic. And it was like, it just didn't land for me. The jokes just didn't land. I've seen this done better so many times in British comedy, and it's been really funny, and they've built up the joke and they've delivered the joke, bam, and it's been hilarious. And that's when the laughter kicks in. The laughter doesn't kick in as soon as you say hello.
Yeah. Well, I remember this was ABC. This is during the 70s. They also used the canned laughter because the music was too expensive too. The CBS pilot, if you see it on the DVD, they actually have more music. But again, the other issue is as well, remember that there's 8 people in one squad room. So you can't really do, a really good detailed setup. They can do a little bit of a setup. But remember that American comedy is different from British comedy. And I
think it would work better as a stage show.
Yeah. But I'll tell you now, my problem with canned laughter is it's like it's a cue telling you that you should laugh.
Yeah, and that's not funny.
I will laugh when I want to laugh.
Right.
And if they're prompting you to laugh, it doesn't work.
Right. No, and I take your point, but unfortunately, that's also what the network wanted.
And that's what the network always
Right.
did.
And the other issue is too, so many networks did it that even when the producer and the director said don't do it, they still did it. So the other issue is too that there was 5 episodes that they filmed and the network actually didn't want to show it because of the subject matter. Also, they had, if you watch the first season and the second season, there's actually a character that was written out on this episode where they're actually swearing at each other in Spanish, if you really know Spanish. So there was a lot of quick jokes. There's a lot of jokes too about flashers, about a flasher committing suicide is one episode. They have an episode about rape. They have like 5 episodes about people that are flashers. I mean, it's a very 1970s, sitcom. So this is the most famous, but it's not the best. And they also had 5 episodes where they were not in the squad room. One was with Wojo. One was a stakeout episode with Wojo. What was another one? Another one, Barney was in jail because he wouldn't give the judge the name of his informant and stuff like that. So there's a lot of episodes that are actually, a little bit more uncomfortable than this in terms of the subject matter.
Yeah, I mean, I know you like it, Alex. But do you see where me and Lee are coming from? Do you think, because I'm more used to British humor, like
I think I'm going to answer your question. I think that the canned laughter is cheesy and cheap, but that was sort of a trope, because when they stopped doing things in front of a live audience, like Lucy's show and Happy Days and stuff like that, when they moved into the regular set and they moved the wall in so that they could build another set in the studio next to it, and they shut down the audience bleachers, they went to canned laughter every single show.
Right. Well, that was.
I mean, that was the way it went. And let me finish. And then there was like, it wasn't just, this show or even this network. I mean, it was kind of like when they ran out of room in the studio to have the audience bleachers there, they moved to canned laughter. And then there was also, it was, I mean, there was subtle things that the characters were, especially in this show. They had Fish, who was played by Vigoda, and he was able to like jump from roof to rooftop, and the jokes about him leading up to that were that he was an old man and he was not able to really move, and he didn't really like to talk to his wife. So when he talked to his wife in this one, that was kind of amazing too, and this character, what's his name?
Wow, who?
This one.
Which one is his?
That one right there.
What, Harris?
No, him.
Levitt?
Levitt.
Yeah.
When Levitt walks into the squad room, he's always like walking up, and then there's always the short joke, and then he moves into whatever he's doing, and then when he leaves, he pirouettes out, and that there's always a canned laughter where he walks in, the short joke, and then he pirouettes to leave. And then Imana is always about, this one is always about the coffee.
Right, the coffee.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, this one's always about his writing, and then this one's always about, he's like,
The old days.
The old days, and Dietrich, and I mean, there's all of them had like their little joke,
Right.
and so in order to keep that flow going with their character, they let cam laugh dropped every single time that they did that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing with Wojciechowicz was that he always trusted people. His deal was, he was straight up, and he was really, so he trusted this lady with the brownies. He was just like, he didn't go sniff, sniff, sniff. I mean, even though pretty much cannabis was ubiquitous in New York City at the time, especially in Greenwich Village. And that's where freaking Stonewall and all the big gay clubs were in Greenwich Village. It was where Bob Dylan was. It was where the Beatles hung out. It was where it was the hip joint.
Right.
Anything around Greenwich Street and Christopher Arch and all of that was all the hip place, and it was surrounded by cannabis. So when Wojciechowicz brings in the box of brownies that are got cannabis in them, everybody's like, they all noticed kind of right away that it was changing things. But heck, all the whole city, all of New York City was that way, but especially around Greenwich Village, party central, and lots of pot, and it was all Mexican dirt weed, and it was all kind of but it was it'll get you high.
Okay. So the other thing that they mentioned, Howland had mentioned on video, was he wanted to be wilder in the episode, but the director and the writer said, no, you have to be the straight man while everybody else is, silly.
Okay.
And the other thing is, again, even today, even in this modern digital age, even on the radio, they will say, there can't be any dead air. So I think because most producers and most networks couldn't afford music, they wanted to put in the canned laughter to train people either to laugh or to realize that they were watching a TV show, as opposed to the commercials.
Yeah, but I have a big objection to saying training people to laugh.
I know.
Yeah,
but still.
It was more that they ran out of room in the studio.
Right. Well, also
it wasn't about,
Susie, you understand what I'm saying about the dead air too. Is they did that also so that there wouldn't be a dead, silence.
Oh, all right.
But sometimes silence is funny. Yeah, but hold on. Sometimes silence is funny because it's about the timing of a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, like I said,
sometimes silence is fun. A comedian will go quiet after a joke because of to hold the silence.
Okay, but the other thing too is, remember that you also have to take it in the context of this show. They actually had to write out characters not only because they left and did other acting jobs, but because they even admitted that they didn't want to write for like 12 people, an episode, or they would bring in, that there was another TV trope of using the same actor but giving him a different name. So they had that was the other shortcoming of the show, is that not only was it censored, but they had the same 15 actors doing the same or similar character like 9 times in the whole series. Just like Dragnet did and other TV shows before the 90s, is that they used the same actor, right?
Even if they came back as the same character, that was a portion of Greenwich Village too.
Right.
Is that it's a small community.
Right.
A small, very hip community.
Right. And I will also say, because this was also a part of the show, they had 3 gay characters in the show, which is pretty good considering it's the 70s. So as a matter of fact.
Okay, you just take it.
Hang on, Susie.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, they had one character that was arrested later on in the show, but wasn't prosecuted because he had a very small amount of marijuana, on him. This was like 2 seasons later, that he had already been in the show like 5 times already. And he was making jokes. He admitted he was gay. He said, why can't I be, a gay cop? There's gay robbers and other, similar thoughts. But again, remember, this is from 1973 to 1982. And they also retired the show because they said, well, we can't find anybody else to write new scripts anymore. And they didn't want to repeat. And in the last season, they even admitted in the squad room that they were, bored. So it's very ironic that if you watch the show or if you watch the unedited versions, not every single version on the internet is unedited for copyright reasons, because Sony owns Barney Miller now, because almost everybody that wrote for the show and produced for the show and acted for the show is dead now, because this was 73 and it's 2019 now. There's a lot of very quick jokes. There's a lot of jokes that are very related to the decade, just like Mork and Mindy. And if you're not watching, the show, or the complete episode, you actually will miss a few jokes and references. I know Alec probably doesn't view them as real jokes because they don't have a punchline, but it's just like a quick reference. And unfortunately, in sitcoms, that is considered a joke now for a long time. Is that you may, one-liners is what they're called. So it's not really a setup where you say, well, my dog has no nose. You just as a matter of fact, they did that in the 90s. They had the Taco Bell dog and they had all that. It was just a very quick reference.
Favorite moments, Lee? Unfavorite moments?
To be honest, I didn't have any. As I say, it just washed over me. Trying to think, I agree with Ali that the 2 Polish people didn't do anything for me. The Japanese actor didn't do it for me. He keep going mushy, mushy, mushy. It wasn't very funny at all. No,
then he started singing.
Mushy mushy is how you answer the phone in Japanese.
Ah, right. Well, I did the other act, the cop who brought the brownies in. I could see, he's the gormless cop who everything,
Yeah.
He's the thick guy. Yeah, I can understand that character. Every sort of sitcom has that sort of character. I mean, in the UK they have, like shall we say, Trigger, the Only Fools and Horses sort of.
Or
character.
Nick from My Family, things like that.
That sort of character. Yeah, that's.
Or Alice from or Vicar Dibley Alice.
So that's set in stone. You've got
exactly
in comedy. But favorite moments? No, I'm sorry, I can't. Maybe the one with Fish and the cop who was going on about his wife. I thought that was, that's when he was high on the hash, stood up to him. That's my wife you're talking about. Even if he doesn't like her. Yeah, but apart from that, no, it just sort of washed over. I've always said it though. American comedy, I don't know. I miss it. It just doesn't hit home for me. The Brits, in my opinion, the British do it better.
Okay, throw it to Alan.
Okay, Alec, go ahead.
Nothing.
Okay, well, no, we'll come back to you. Okay, now remember also that Barney Miller has to be.
Okay, whoa.
Go ahead.
Let me put this very clear. I do not have any favorite moments because I didn't like it.
Okay. All right.
I didn't find it funny. I'm sorry. I say it as it is. I didn't find it funny. I think programs
anything you
like
hated?
Wait there. I think the programs like Vicar Dibley are far more funnier, and I think Keeping Up Appearances, Blackadder, Red Dwarf, I can go on. they're so much funnier than this.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe it's because I'm used to British comedy because I'm British
Yeah.
and I'm not American and I'm not used to watching American comedy. That could be it.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't funny.
Okay. Now, Barney Miller was written 15 years before almost any of the shows that you mentioned.
Yeah, but there were still British comedies in around that time. I mean, you had British comedies in the 60s.
Right. Okay, so they
Yeah,
didn't
on
have
on the buses around this time, wasn't it?
Okay, but how many British TV shows or comedies were there about cops?
Can you think of any, Lee? Around the 70s? About cops around the I'm not too sure, but it doesn't matter what it's about because it's the same characters and dynamic, isn't it? Wherever it is, a sitcom is still a sitcom. It's still got the same tropes, if you get what I mean. I mean, there was lots of sitcoms. There was On the Buses. There was other sitcoms like
Man About the House.
Man About the House and Love Thy Neighbour.
Love Thy Neighbour, yeah. There's quite a few in the 70s.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that. Look, don't get me wrong. I don't think those comedies are great. I think comedy really took off in the 80s. Especially, I think things like 40 Towers are brilliant. Stuff like that.
40 Towers was the 70s.
Yeah, but it was later 70s.
No.
No, it wasn't. When was that? When was 40 Towers?
The first series was about 1975, 76.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get your facts right, Ali.
Yeah, but it's not early 70s. It's not early 70s.
Well, 70s.
So, I like that. That's brilliant. This is no way near as funny as that.
Okay.
I just love 40 Towers.
All right.
And then
So,
Dad's Army. Oh, wait. Of course you got Dad's Army.
There you go.
okay. So
Dad's Army. Forgot about that.
You've mentioned some really awesome stuff, some really, really funny British stuff. This is sort of stage stoic American humor from the 70s.
Yeah.
It's not fall off your chair, roll around on the floor like it is, like if you're watching,
MASH or whatever.
Or the Monty Python and the whole it honestly has more of it's just really down to earth humor, and like that is not considered really funny to people in England and in Wales and in Scotland, and so I mean I get it. I get that that's the way it is. I'm learning to like this show because he likes it so much. It wasn't actually on my radar. Just let me finish. It wasn't on my radar until I got here to this show.
Okay.
So I mean, Alice and Taxi. I liked Taxi. I liked Happy Days. I liked a lot of other comedy shows, sitcoms, but Barney Miller wasn't very funny to me when I first saw it until I started watching it long stretches, like this episode, that episode. But according to like the fans, according to the people like Alex who really like the show, Hash is one of the best episodes. And
Really?
yeah, it's like it's actually one of the fan favorites of this particular series.
That says a lot.
It does, and so there's a when you get into it, you're like I guess this is what they hold up, and for a sitcom set in a police station in one of the coolest parts of New York, it doesn't have the kind of flash that I would assume from New York. You know, I would assume so much other stuff would blow in, but they kept it calm and they kept it cool, and that was their comedy styling.
So
And
Alex, oh no, you can't. Yeah.
Okay,
No, carry on.
now let me.
No, I want to ask you, Alex.
Go ahead.
Did you grow up with this comedy?
Yes, I did. I did partially. I did partially. Again, there's another episode where a teacher goes crazy. Okay, and remember, this is on ABC in 1977, and the teacher says, "What am I supposed to be like that guy from Welcome Back, Kotter?" And this was the same network and the same time frame. So, and the other thing that's very similar, and I think that you guys may not be realizing this is one of the 1970s shows where they had gay people, they had religious people, they had a black guy. They had two black guys in this show. They had a Puerto Rican guy over my head here.
Yeah, so it was very diverse. Yeah.
So remember that in America in the 1970s, they were still discussing, you know, what's Spanish, what isn't, what is Puerto Rican, what isn't. So I think, in a way, I know Love Thy Neighbor sort of addresses this. But remember that you're talking about an American audience. So some of the things they did, just like Norman Lear with Good Times and other, you know, the Jeffersons, they were trying to push a political, they were trying to tell a story and give it a political, you know.
The characters may be diverse,
right,
but it wasn't funny.
Okay, well, again, you know, again, if they could have done it their way in terms of the actors completely and the director and the producer, he admitted later on that not only did ABC cheat him out of a lot of money for this show, but there were things that they couldn't do because the network just said, you know, no, we're not going to, you know, allow it. So I think you also have to look at it in this context of, this is the 70s. They're talking about marriage. There's episodes where they're talking about, you know, you really have to relate to your wife. They're talking about episodes with flashers, people addicted to drugs, people that want the American flag on everything, people that want to walk around with no clothes on. So you have to remember, in that context, in the 70s, that was actually a little wild. It may not resonate now per se. But
Can I just say something?
Even for the 70s, the humor was down to earth.
Right,
it wasn't over the top funny.
Right. Okay. But I'm just.
I mean,
saying,
the laugh track should have been left out.
Yeah, I agree. I don't.
Now I'm thinking about it. For humor like that, I mean, like I realized that they had to do something because they they'd set up a
system,
a way of a soundtrack where
Okay, but remember, this is TV. TV has tropes. American TV has tropes. Spanish TV has tropes of a different kind.
Okay.
All that stuff.
We know that.
Okay, so you have to remember that. Okay, I'm sorry if she's getting frustrated, but I'm trying to illustrate a point here. That, remember, technically, Fish was supposed to be a very, very old cop, almost in his 70s. You know what I mean? So they were trying to set up a, let's all work together, let's all be compassionate, let's all, you know what I mean? So just like Welcome Back, Kotter, they had set up a black guy, a Puerto Rican guy, a woman, you know, of a different race, and they were also making fun of the conservative 1950s style as well, because they also had episodes about Vietnam as well. And Wojciechowicz was from Vietnam, as they said in the show, that he was over there when he was very young. So when you look at it in the context of, it's the 70s, they're trying to be different. Now it's not as impressive because everybody understands it now. You know what I mean? But just like Good Times, just like All in the Family, just like Facts of Life, just like Barney Miller, they were trying to set up different characters and people that may have a different point of view, not the same, you know, 1950s, 1960s, you know, viewpoint of everybody's Caucasian, et cetera, et cetera. You know, remember, this is American TV we're talking about as well. So they were trying to be, diverse.
Yeah, Lee, all I can say is just be grateful that Alex chose one of the better episodes.
Can I just say, we have the good thing about this cast is we have got a new catchphrase for Susan now. Let me finish. That is Susan's catchphrase from now on. Let me finish.
Let me finish.
Let me finish. I'm going to get the T-shirts printed up. Susan says,
Let me finish.
let me
Let me
finish.
finish.
Okay, so Susan, let me ask you a question while we're on the subject. How did this show grow on you? Did you start sort of relating to the characters, or is it that you saw what?
No, you forced her into watching it. She had no bloody choice.
No, but she wasn't a fan originally. So I'm saying there must have been something in the show that she liked.
But she might not be a fan now. Ask her. Is she a fan now?
Okay, well, I'm learning to like it. I'm going to be really super diplomatic.
Oh, listen to this.
Very diplomatic.
I'm siding with them because they're British.
In other words,
Fighting with anybody. This is my opinion, my darling.
let her finish. Alex, let
Let
her
me finish. There, like I said, the humor is down to earth. The colors are muted. The space of the squad room is,
Tiny.
finite and small, and they can't have flamboyance, and that's kind of something that I enjoy in television. I like a little flamboyance in my TV. I liked Fonzie a lot because he was super flamboyant and he was super tough and stuff, and I thought that was really great. But I can't knock it because they are a good ensemble.
Yeah, they work.
Well, let me ask you, do any of the characters have because here in the UK, comedy, we kind of relate comedy to catchphrases like, I don't believe it. Or, there's this time next year we'll be millionaires.
I don't think any of Barney Miller characters have a catchphrase. They have.
Yeah, see, a lot of British comedy has catchphrases.
Yeah, I know,
Comedy,
and not only British comedy, but British drama as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the Doctor always has to have one, right? In Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Alonzi or whatever it is.
Cat had a few in Red Dwarf, and so comedy and drama. It is something that the British people enjoy.
We love a catchphrase. We absolutely adore a catchphrase.
Yep, I see that.
And there's no real. I didn't think there was real insane characters. Like take the Vicar Dibley, for example. They're all massively insane, aren't they?
Bonkers.
Whether you've got Alice is the dopey one. You've got the farmer, Owen, who is completely mad. You've got Jim Trott, who is no. Yes, you've not got characters like that. Or you've not got somebody like Hyacinth Bouquet or Bucket. You've not got someone like that who's over exaggerated. And I like the over exaggeration element of a comedy, and I didn't feel like there was over exaggeration. That's the problem.
It's down to earth.
Yeah, and that's the problem I had with it. Yeah.
Yep, it's a whole different comedy style.
Yeah, like Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf is over the top. The cat is over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not only is the science fiction fun in that show, but the humor. I mean, I did come from loving, British comedy before I loved American comedy.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I'm cut from a different cloth than this.
Okay. Well, probably we should have done a different season, but
or a different show.
the thing is this.
Fan favorite.
Yeah, well, not only that. There wasn't exactly a catchphrase here because the producer and the writer knew that it was going to be compared to Welcome Back Kotter, even though Welcome Back Kotter did have a diverse cast.
They did have some catchphrases.
Right, and also you have to remember that the teacher in Welcome Back Kotter, if you think about it, is very similar to Barney Miller here.
Right, but
Right.
Also
had catchphrases.
The students.
Also they had John Travolta as well.
Right. Well, yeah, until he left for movies. But he did have catchphrases like, I'm so confused. And he had the song, ba, 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 all that junk.
See, I know Welcome Back Kotter, because I used to watch that.
Okay.
See, I know that one, Alid. I know that show.
So wouldn't you say, Lee, that there's elements here in Barney Miller that are sort of imitating Welcome Back Kotter, especially the Barney Miller character, that he's trying to be very fair and he's trying to be very compassionate, and everybody else is a little bit more selfish, a little bit more.
No.
You wouldn't say that? Okay. But again, so I like it because it was different for the time. They were even making fun of Kojak and Beretta and all that. So remember that this is on a network that had Charlie's Angels, Beretta, Welcome Back Kotter, Battle of the Network Stars, which some of them were in. So it's trying to compete with all that. Meanwhile, the producer and the writers can't get too wild because it's the 70s and ABC is actually telling them we didn't want to show certain episodes, like ones they did about drug dealers or prostitutes or whatever. And whoever heard of a show that didn't have, stories about that either. And ABC.
And I think as well, the set was too limiting.
Right.
To be honest, I think it's just all cramped in because you've got like the cell and then the desks and then basically the door, and that is it.
Yep.
And it didn't go anywhere else. It didn't move to anywhere else, did it? It just stayed in one place.
No, there was like one episode a season where they went somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah.
They had one episode a season where they went. But here's the other thing. If you watch later on in the second season, and
Alex,
I'm talking to anybody who might be watching this.
Is this being recorded?
There's two other characters in the show that weren't in this episode where they said to Barney Miller, "Oh, I see what you did there. Like what Barney Miller would do is he would actually put the two people that were arguing in the cell together, and 9 times out of 10 they would come to an agreement because they had to, because they were right next to each other. So one of the characters in the show says, "Oh, that's why you put them in the cell together, so they would work it out."
Or they'd kill each other.
But where's the comedy in that?
That's what they decided to do. That again, it's also the producer as well, and the producer didn't have a lot of hits after this, even though he wrote some episodes of Bewitched and all that. But the funny thing is, for a guy that only had 3 properties, he made millions of dollars. So I guess he was lucky in that respect. And all the actors that have worked in all his shows did like him. So I guess he was a weird character. Everybody's admitted, after he's dead now, everybody admitted that he was a very eccentric character. But he wanted a show like this. He thought that the world needed a comedy version of the 1951 film Detective Story, but to update it to the 70s.
And for all a diverse cast, there wasn't many women in it, was there?
No, and the other thing that was interesting about this show was that there was it was trying to be a comedy about cops, but they weren't willing to make fun of policing itself.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where perhaps
that's the other problem.
Perhaps they fell down, because there was plenty of other cop shows, and there was even another comedy cop show, Car 54, Where Are You, in the 50s and 60s, and that was a comedy. It starred the people in Munsters. It was great. But you know, in that one they didn't make fun of policing.
Yeah, because
And see, that's the problem. See, that's where these American comedy shows fall down, is that they don't actually make fun of the thing that they're showing.
They have too much reverence for it. Yeah.
They show the thing and they try to build jokes out of the other people. They make fun of the normal people more than they make fun of the actual operation of policing.
Right.
And there was plenty of cop shows that they could, you know, the drama shows, they could have just, you know, gone with no comedy about policing. But, you know, when they don't do that, that is a big mistake, actually.
Okay, so let me say here, there actually were 4 women cops in the show. It's just not in this episode.
Or in the series.
No, there is, Susie. You just don't remember them, which is fine because she hasn't seen them. Remember, this is an American audience that you're talking about, and they didn't, back then in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they didn't want to make fun of cops. They didn't want to make fun of firemen. They didn't want to make fun of priests. They were still, you know, very high up. Okay? So remember that's they were
why the
right.
things are funny.
Right, but they were trying
to make fun of the thing itself.
Yeah.
That's what's funny. Otherwise, it's not. It's just too down to earth, and it's making fun of the wrong people.
Okay, well, as I said, remember that this is the 70s. ABC had problems with some of the stories they did, so they couldn't really make fun of it. And they had another story where the Puerto Rican cop said to someone in the cell, "If you're not a priest, you should be ashamed of yourself." But the minute he said that, he goes, "But in case you are a priest, good morning, Father." So they had to tread very lightly as to what jokes they could do. So remember that. Now I think it would be different. If they wrote something similar, I think it would be different now. But this is the 70s to the 80s. And they couldn't, you know, they couldn't go the whole hog. They couldn't go the whole way and make fun. But they talked about sexuality. They talked about race. They talked about yeah.
They didn't, unless they were making fun of the people
Yeah.
who were, you know, out there, just the normal people.
Yeah.
They were, you know, they were talking. They were just talking then, and it wasn't funny.
Well, I love the show. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if everybody. Relax, Susie. Relax. I'm sorry if everybody didn't like it.
I'm not.
I'm trying to say. I'm trying to illustrate a point. This is a sitcom from the 70s. They can't go the whole hog. I know. I'm not mad or anything, but I'm just saying they couldn't go the whole hog like they can. Furious. Yeah, no, it's not that way. They can't go the whole hog like they can now. Now it would be very, very different. And I think that's why they had this episode. That was the only way they could show everybody being silly. And I think that's what people here are forgetting, is that they're supposed to be button-down cops, professional, no police brutality, fair, all that stuff. And the thing is, this was one of the few times in the whole series that they were actually allowed to be, you know, silly, because there still was so much they were afraid to do on television. You know what I mean? Then Fish's line at the end, not only what am I talking about, but when he finds out that the brownies were laced with hashish, he says, "First time I felt good in 20 years, and it has to be legal." So that was, unfortunately, as far as they could go, and the network's still showing it.
Okay.
See, can I also just add some comedies in the 70s in the UK where some others do have them. I really like that one. That was great. That was, and then of course you had Porridge as well, and you had Still Open All Hours, you know, things like that. So the UK, I mean, Porridge was set in a prison,
right?
And they were brilliant comedies. I mean, Open All Hours was great. So yeah, I prefer those comedies myself. And I think, I mean, I don't know if you've seen Open All Hours.
Nope.
We'll have to do that one.
All right.
Yeah. Because that one's got Ronnie Barker in, and Ronnie Barker is one of the most brilliant comedy actors ever in TV history.
I mean, again, too, remember that there was Taxi also on the network, even though it was a little later. And remember that I remember watching Taxi also, and people didn't like the fact that the woman in the show didn't have more lines, or Andy Kaufman was in the show, which a lot of people did not like Andy Kaufman. My mother loves Andy Kaufman. I didn't like him, but a lot of people thought that he was very strange. They had the Gong Show as well that people thought was very strange. Right, it was a game show. But they had the unknown comic with the paper bag on his head. So you have to remember that for that time, that was considered a little wild. I know it isn't great. I understand that. But, you also had Christopher Lloyd, who was also on Barney Miller in a couple of episodes, that a lot of people still, for many years, considered him kind of crazy as well. So, it's just the frame of mind and of reference, too.
And can I say something? You had Are You Being Served as well? You've seen that, haven't you? Are You Being Served? I mean, that's great. That's got way over the top characters, things like that.
And they make fun of the store, and they make fun of what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And you've got Iron Free.
I think I've uncovered the key difference between the comedies is that one makes fun of the surrounding, situations, and one makes fun of the characters and what they're doing in their lives.
And then you've got the catchphrases, which I keep on going back to, which you've got I'm free, which the character says in Are You Being Served?
Yeah.
I'm free, yeah.
Are you are you guys willing to rate this?
Wow, I'm not too sure about that. I don't want to upset Alex.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
So lead them around and get ratings from.
All right. So, Lee, what do you think of it? I mean, are you you just don't like it? You don't see anything amusing or anything like that?
Don't leave.
Yeah,
Hang on.
I did listen to. I mean, I've just while you were chatting, I've just been looking over there, looking at my comedy collection. It's all British, apart from one TV series, which is Curb Your Enthusiasm. See, that humour I love.
That's
that type of, and that humour in Barney Miller was not there at all. For me, I'm giving it a 1.
Well, also to be fair, Curb Your Enthusiasm was also in the '90s, so it was a different decade as well.
Yeah, I'm saying is, but I'm saying all of my comedy collection over there. I've just been counting up. It's all British comedy, apart from one, which is Curb Your Enthusiasm.
No, I heard you.
Yep. Yeah, so it just shows you that where I lean towards.
Well, you will admit that for many decades, American humor couldn't be as rude. That's part of the appeal of British comedy, is that it will take the piss, as the British say, where the Americans, they wouldn't go that far.
But I think a lot of British comedy as well relies on innuendo.
Right.
A lot of British comedy is innuendo. Right. And that's where the joke comes from. You don't actually say the word, but you get close to it and you put it into the person's head. Like if you want to describing something sexual, people laugh. If you do it as an innuendo. And that's why innuendos are so popular here in the UK. I mean, if you go to Panto every year, even though Pantos are for kids, it's full of innuendos that parents will absolutely howl at. Which kids will just laugh because everybody else is laughing, but parents, they know what is meant in that joke.
And because it's all men except for very few women. And it's like Mrs. Slocum's pussy.
Yeah. Well, again,
It's Alex. It's like Mrs. Slocum's pussy. Once she's talking about her pussy, you've seen Are You Being Served? When she's talking about her pussy, of course she's on about her cat. Innocently, she's on about her cat.
right.
But people, people take it as her pussy.
Okay, but remember too, again, I have to keep reminding that in the 70s sitcoms, no matter what network you were watching, they wouldn't have used that word. Definitely not.
No.
So the problem was, as close as you could get to 1970s innuendos was like tickling the ivories. They wouldn't have gone hide the sausage, because the minute they heard that word, they would have freaked out.
Okay, so
it's like Mr. Humphreys.
Yeah.
He wasn't openly gay in the show, but everybody was laughing at the fact that he was overly camp, and they knew he was gay.
Right. Well, as I mentioned, there are gay characters, and
like he says, "Oh, I'll do the inside leg."
core.
okay, but it's not written for the core. Go ahead.
The core characters. That's where that's why the comedy is different.
Okay.
Is the comedy is not about these guys. The comedy is about everybody else in the city of New York.
Okay, but the thing is, again, this is 1970s. This is ABC.
Wait. That was 1970s.
They didn't want to go there.
So they didn't.
Right. So they didn't.
What they did.
So they have to write with what the network allows. Do you guys remember? I remember growing up, MASH. I don't know if you guys have seen MASH.
No.
Okay.
I don't like American comedies.
Okay. So remember how Klinger would always be in a dress or be in a pearl? I'm talking to Lee right now. I think he said, "Did you see MASH, Lee?"
Yeah, I did. I'm not a fan of it, but I have seen it. Yeah.
All right. Now, do you remember when Klinger would dress up and have a dress on and pearls and all that? Okay.
Out the army, yeah.
Right. So there was a lot of people that complained about that. So the problem is, it's a different viewpoint, and you have to break it down in a certain way. Okay. And actually, in Barney Miller, and I think you've seen that, and I can show you episodes where they did dress up as women, but it was for a mugging detail. It was to catch men that were talking dirty to anybody in the park or whatever.
Okay, but they didn't make fun of the policing. It was just like this is what we're doing.
Okay, but that's the difference between American comedy and British comedy.
Okay, so that's the key.
Right.
And so I'm going to turn this key and say that are you ready to rate it yourself?
Don't yell. Thank you. Yeah, I love the show.
Is your body ready, Alex?
No, I'm not. I'm talking loud.
I'm just talking at the same level.
Okay.
But can I just say as well, is that I do think one of the key things is this was just in one room. And I can't think of any British comedy where it's just in one room. If anybody else can anybody else think of a British comedy that's solely in one room?
The Royal Family.
Yeah.
Oh, that is, apart from that, that's the only one I've never been keen on that one. I know it's very popular, but it's not.
No, actually, I like that show as well, actually.
Yeah.
So,
but that's kind of different. That's a kind of different style of comedy, really, than it's kind of a different take on British comedy.
Right.
Isn't it? It's not your typical British humour, really.
Yeah. Well, again, a lot of things that you guys are mentioning are either in a different situation or they're in a different decade. It's not the same.
No. Are You Being Served and things like that? One, they're in the 70s, and two, the decade, the situation does not count because it's the same characters.
Right.
It's the characters that count in a comedy.
Okay, well, like I said, there were other characters, but again, they were presenting a different type, and again, the network did have a lot to do with it. They admitted later on in the 90s and all that had it been on a cable network, it would have been a lot wilder, and they just couldn't do it.
They still would not have made fun of policing,
right? Because
is where British comedy diverges from American comedy.
If you look at it, you've got the Thin Blue Line, which is a police comedy in the UK. I don't know if you've seen that, but I
love that show. I love that.
Yeah, Rowan Atkinson in, and they make fun of policing.
Right. Yeah,
they
and
make fun of the policing.
yeah, and the way that they constantly referenced NYPD Blue as well.
Yeah.
But again, also a different decade. Again, but it also was a different writer as well.
Well, I know that. Yeah.
Okay, everything is a different writer. I
Okay.
mean, UK doesn't have the same
All
writers
right,
as the
so
United States.
yeah, so again, I do like 90% of the show. I do appreciate what they were trying to do. Could it have been written better? Could they have been wilder? Absolutely. They were not allowed to. This was not Norman Lear. If it was Norman Lear, I think it would have definitely been as wild as you guys want. Most of the audiences and most of the networks, they weren't going to make fun of priests. They weren't going to make fun of policemen. They weren't going to make fun of firemen.
Yeah, but
Wasn't going to happen.
Alex,
Wasn't going to happen.
I thought the characters were bland. Like I've said as well, you've got far more wilder characters, just characters in British comedies. Far more outrageous, over the top characters, which I thought these were all rather just plain, boring men in suits, which really they were.
Oh well. Okay.
So, do you think you could rate it?
Okay. I thought you said you wanted.
Alad.
I think I'm gonna go with Lee, and I'm gonna give it a 1.
All right. Well, I'll give it a 7. It's pretty fun for me. I am enjoying this, and I know that this is one of the fan favorites, and so I'm going to carry on watching this series, and so that's my take on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that they're trying to be downbeat, but that was one of the appeals of the show. They were trying to be different. It's the network changed a lot of stuff. It is the 70s. They're competing with Kojak. They're competing with Beretta, a lot of other shows. They did try their best. Yeah, sometimes I do wish that they could have written it on another network. It might have been wilder. Unfortunately, especially in that day and age, they weren't going to be making fun of cops and firemen. It just wasn't done. And they also didn't want to scare the audience too much as well. And I think that's the problem, that they sort of had to be, downgraded. They had to play it, a little bit more closer. There was other episodes where Harris did actually punch people. There were other episodes where they went into Wojo's apartment. The Fish had his own show where he took care of kids.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yamana died in real life, so they had to write him out of the show. Luger was meant to be a stereotype of 1940s, 1950s cops, where he admitted in the show, we'd beat people up. And Barney Miller goes, no, things are different now. You can't do that. You have to talk to people. You can't beat them up. So while every episode isn't perfect, I can see what they were trying to do. I can see their point of view. It is actually a happy ending when you see the end of the show.
What would you rate it?
I'm going to rate it a 9. I'm a big fan of the show. It won me over. It won me over with some of the sarcasm. It won me over with Barney Miller being so compassionate, like Welcome Back, Kotter. And again, it was the style. It couldn't be too wild. By the time the 90s rolled around and everybody had cable and there was wild movies everywhere, and you didn't have to go to the cinema just to see the Blues Brothers and other, movies that had more swearing and more, violence and things like that. It's definitely a product of its time.
And as well, I just want to add, it must have had its place because it lasted so long. So obviously, people were enjoying it and finding humor in it. They were finding humor in the show. I mean, me and Lee might not find the humor, but
Right.
At that time, America must have enjoyed this show.
Yeah. There was an episode that was spun off into Fish where he ran sort of an orphanage with his wife. There was one character in Barney Miller. He was very, it was shown that he was a very ignorant kind of guy. And at one point, he kind of yells out in the squad room to Harris, he goes, ask the colored guy. And remember, this is 75. And Yamana, the Japanese guy, goes, I'm the one that's colored. He's not. So you have to remember that that's the type of point that they were, making. Maybe it's not a great one, but for the time, it was nice.
But is it funny?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right, there we go.
So, you have to understand the
it's
humor.
funny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you have to understand that for the time, like even MASH, a lot of people in this state like MASH. And it took me many years to watch that show and go, okay, now I kind of understand, and that had canned laughter in it as well.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for watching the Barney Miller podcast. Finish this.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry that you guys didn't like it. Like I said, if you watch more
Don't worry, at least it was the best episode.
No, it wasn't the best
I
episode.
think what we would have scored the rest of the episodes.
Well, like I said, other episodes cover more material, and they actually have different characters as well. But I will like the show. I like it for, the jokes and the sarcasm and the very particular way of life that it was, looking at. It's just it was confined by the network and by the decade, and they couldn't get too wild. And one of the reasons why this is a fan favorite is this is as wild as they could get and still be on ABC.
Okay.
But anyway, thank you for watching. Boy, did it get animated. We definitely put our opinions there. I will say also that I do like
more so than the last cast.
Yeah, I do like British comedy, and part of
do
the
you not
reason,
remember how the last cast ended?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay.
I will say also that I agree with Lee and Alan. I do like a lot of British comedy, and I do like the fact that it is wilder than American comedy. They're willing to insult it, where American shows in the 70s weren't willing to do that. I'm sorry, they just weren't. But we hope you enjoyed our cast. Give us your opinions. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter.
Are we?
Yep.
Are we on YouTube?
Yes, we are.
Oh my God, I'll have to check it out. What's the channel called?
I believe it's called Geeks Assembled. Yes?
Well, that's quite a long title. I believe it's called Geeks Assembled. Why don't you just call it Geeks Assembled? I'd do that.
Very funny. Very funny.
Yeah, you can have that one for free.
So, thanks for joining us, and hopefully it won't be quite as animated next time.
Oh, whatever.
It depends if you're picking the cast.
Yeah.